Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be going over the first flight of what we consider now the U.S. Postal Airmail Service. So, a brief history of this: it was proposed in a bill presented by Representative Shepard in 1914. So, this is kind of during the time of World War II. This bill was put forth, and funding was put in the hands of a gentleman named Benjamin Lipsner. And Mr. Lipsner kind of created the bone structure of what this service was going to be. Now, he thought that the most efficient way to get mail throughout the country was to collect it in D.C., fly it to Philadelphia to pick up more mail, or to drop off letters that needed to go to that part of the country, and then fly it the third leg of the way to New York City, where the mail would be dropped off and then sent out to where it needed to go. Now, the first actual flight of the air service was done on May 15th, 1918, and it was piloted by Lieutenant George Boyle. Mr. Boyle got in his plane outside of Washington, D.C. at the Potomac Park Polo Field and started off on his journey to Philadelphia and then New York. A lot of big name people were in attendance that day, to include the president, Woodrow Wilson. So Lieutenant Boyle got in his plane, he took off from the airfield, and everyone expected him to go north. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and Lieutenant Boyle went south. So during his flight, he was very disoriented and could not figure out which way was the proper way to go. He eventually had to make a couple landings south of DC. First one he did, he stopped and he kind of reoriented himself, looked at his compass, and figured out which direction he needed to go. On his second stop, though, to figure out where he needed to go, he damaged one of his propellers, and that kind of ended the mission in a small little airfield near Woodruff, Maryland. Don't worry, though, Lieutenant Boyle would not be deterred from finishing his mission. They fixed the propeller, and then on May 17th, Lieutenant Boyle took off again for a second time, this time with an escort. The escort took him as far as Baltimore, Maryland, and when the escort said, "Hey, just follow the Chesapeake Bay all the way to Philadelphia, you can't miss it," Lieutenant Boyle gave a salute, and his escort departed. Right when his escort departed, somehow Lieutenant Boyle again made the same mistake and turned his plane around and went south. As he was flying all day, he noticed that his fuel gauge started to get low, so he had to make a stop. He eventually stopped south of DC in a small little farm where he was able to fill up his gas tank. So now on the second takeoff of the day, Lieutenant Boyle took off from the small farm in DC and started actually heading north. For the first time, Lieutenant Boyle by himself headed north towards Philadelphia. As the night carried on, it started to get darker and darker, and obviously he did not get a full tank from this farmer, so his fuel gauge started to dip lower and lower. He had to make an emergency landing because he was pretty much out of fuel and couldn't see where he was going. But luckily for Lieutenant Boyle, he landed at a country club called the Philadelphia Country Club, which was about 15 minutes from his actual destination in Philadelphia. As he was coming down, though, he made a crash landing, which damaged his plane and threw him from the cockpit. Lieutenant Boyle suffered minor injuries, but for the most part, the plane was done. Luckily for him, someone who worked at the country club was able to come help him collect all the mail and get it on a train to its final destination. I hope you enjoyed our little talk about the first beginnings of the U.S. airmail. Everyone have a good day, and thank you for listening.